It's great to be here. Thank you for being here at the show. Thank you to Project Origin for hosting this event. We're going to talk about a few different coffee farms, Finca Deborah, Iris Estate, Morgan Estate, processing techniques, and the long-term relationship that we've had with Project Origin. To my left is the tall, handsome, sexy Habib. You can call him Habib. Anyway, to you.
Hello and welcome. My name is Habib Marbani. I'm the General Manager of Project Origin. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have someone who hopefully needs no introduction at all, Jamison Savage from Panama. And as he mentioned, we're going to go through a couple of the farms that he represents and some of the coffees that we've processed with Jamison over the years. In particular, what has been showcased a lot out of Panama with our work with Jamison is coffees that are in our Carbonic maceration range. And we're going to taste a couple that represent a little bit of the journey from where we started with CM coffees and to where we are now, what the future hopefully represents. So to begin with, I'd love Jamison to talk about how we started working together.
Sure. So in 2016, Sasha Sestic decided to visit Panama. I believe was it his first time?
Sounds right.
It was his first time to Panama. And Morgan Estate was a coffee that he had heard about. He wanted to taste that coffee. But we also had Finca Deborah on the table for the first time. Sasha tasted those two coffees and was impressed. I think he purchased Morgan Estate. Didn't have Finca Deborah at the time. We were sold out because we had a grand total of 400 pounds. That's 200 kilos. Sasha subsequently came to Panama in 2017. I'm getting my dates wrong, but the point is that Sasha had an extended amount of time at Finca Deborah. We spent 3 days together doing traditional processing, classic processing. And it wasn't until a long night of cupping coffees that the question was asked, what is this carbonic maceration concept? You won the World Barista Championship with that. Sasha gave me an overview of it. I did some due diligence, decided at the tail end of the harvest season to try this process, carbonic maceration, with Morgan Estate. And it just so happened that the process worked. It was a wash carbonic maceration process, and that was kind of the beginning or the seed that literally spawned a coffee production revolution. Some of the processes that we're doing today are ubiquitous, whether it's an anaerobic fermentation, carbonic maceration fermentation, and some of the other unique, interesting things that we do. So that is the initial start of our relationship.
So as Jamison mentioned, the start was with a CM washed product, which is what is about to walk around to you now. So you get to taste what that tastes like. It's the same process, we still do it to this day. And with Project Origin, we put all of our carbonic maceration coffees into categories based on flavor. So for us, it's a diamond category coffee. It's super clean, it's refined, it's floral, it has beautiful acidity and lighter colored fruit notes. Jamison calls this illumination, and that's how they track the processing method used. So that's a Deborah CM washed geisha. That is an illumination process that you're tasting. Jamison's coffee in 2016, Deborah Classic Washed, was used to win the World Barista Championships. So one of the other things I like Jamison to talk about is what was the motivation to change that processing? It was already such an impressive cup.
Sure. Well, one of the passions that I have is coffee production and processing, and nothing's necessarily ever good enough. We always want to make coffee better. We want to make our processing techniques better. Everything we do on farm level, we want to do better each year. So that's really the primary reason why I wanted to give the carbonic maceration process a try. Subsequently, that following year, we created this illumination, actually when Sasha came back, and we did quite a number of different processes. But illumination, as opposed to, say, terroir, which is our classic washed Finca Deborah geisha, it's sort of the difference between analog music and digital music. Cleaner, more transparent, and you can turn the volume up quite a bit. So those are the primary differences between a classic wash versus carbonic maceration.
Did you like what you tasted in year one?
In year one? In year one, well, it took about 4 months. When I initially tasted the carbonic maceration, I literally dropped the spoon on the floor of the cupping lab because I thought it was a failure. But I think it was maybe 4 weeks later, I got a call from Sasha, or an email, and he said he just tasted the carbonic, washed Morgan Estate, and I think he said it brought tears to his eyes, literally. So I tasted it again, and I was shocked. It was an amazing experience, and the following year we went full force in the carbonic maceration process.
So, illumination, the CM wash processing focused on terroir and altering it a little to highlight some fruit notes, right? It's still a washed coffee. It goes into the tank after popping. The following year we moved into CM naturals, so using whole cherry as part of the processing method, and this was, to use Jamison's expression, trying to turn the volume up, but it's turning the volume up on fruit forwardness in coffee. So do you want to talk a bit about that progression?
Right, so after everyone was very excited about the initial results of carbonic maceration, Sasha and the team showed up with the entire team, and we decided to go crazy with the different experimentations. And that's when evolution was born. That is a whole cherry, carbonic macerated natural Finca Deborah. And we blew the doors off of that and just continued to dial up the frequency, so to speak, or the duration in the tank, and did many different experiments. Now we have a complete line that we've actually been building every year for Project Origin exclusively.
Around cup number 2. I'll share it.
Yeah.
That's common, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, copy number 2 coming around is a CM natural. For Project Origin's categories, we call it an amber, which is sitting in a yellow and orange territory of flavour. Look for, fruit forwardness for sure, but still maintaining clarity, sweetness and acidity. The process name is Comet, and that's from Morgan Estate, so that's under the Savage Coffees brand. Super popular coffee as well from the first time we did it. So do you want to tell us a bit about processing more naturals, moving from traditional washed into naturals, and I guess surprises, challenges in doing that?
Yeah, so as a traditional washed coffee drinker, migrating sort of into this realm of very fruit forward, interesting fermented coffees was a bit of a challenge for me. And fortunately, Sash was there to kind of push me over the finish line, keep going, keep going. But one of the things that I've done as a producer, and it's absolutely part of the core of who I am as a producer, is to balance that production cycle with variety and terroir. And you'll notice in all the coffees that we produce, particularly the CM coffees, variety and terroir are the bedrock of these coffees. But in each of these coffees, on the CM natural side, you're going to get a very fruit-forward experience, typically dark stone fruit in many cases, but the clarity in the cup is there, and that's one of the secrets of CM. It's a popular process, but not overwhelmingly so, because it's complex and it requires a lot of discipline. But through the years, we've really perfected this process, and typically we don't have too much spoilage. But when we started, we actually had quite a bit of issues with some of the natural processed CMs.
You talk about some spoilage and risk in processing.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about how you navigate, because I guess time in tank and fermentation types can be controversial.
Yeah.
So can you talk to everybody about, I guess, how you navigate that as a producer, especially if you're being asked to do something that you don't think is going to work, until the first time you try it.
Yeah. Right, so I have my own personal preference, but those are my preferences, and most of my coffees are distinguished by variety and terroir. But I'm not building coffees entirely for myself, obviously. So as a businessman, we have to recognize that we have an audience that appreciates coffees that are more on the fermented side in some ways. And much of the world prefers, at this moment, actually, a fruit-forward fermented cup of coffee, as long as the expression is still there. But what I'm noticing over the last, it's a year and a half, is that as the coffee world experiences most of these coffees from most producers, they're beginning to take a step back and recognizing that the true nuances out of beautiful coffees, variety and terroir expression, are really on the wash side. So we're seeing a bit of a migration back towards these washed coffees that really express where they came from.
The next coffee we're going to send around comes from a estate that you may not have heard of yet. It's Iris Estate, and it's a collaborative venture between Jamison, Sasha, and another partner, Elvin. I'd love you to talk a bit about how that started, what's involved, and we can talk about the coffee that's being served, which is Enigma.
Cool. So Iris Estate, I actually located this piece of property in 2016. Kept my eye on it for a while. While Sasha and the team were spending time in Panama, I asked Sasha if he was interested in maybe spending some time on this piece of property to see if he was interested in collaborating with on a farm. I took Sasha up and Elvin, and sure enough, they fell in love with this property. It is a piece of property that started at 1,850 meters and goes as high as 2,300 meters. So it's probably the highest farm in Latin America, and certainly the largest geisha farm. It's taken quite some time for this farm to develop because of the altitudes. We started planting actually in the fall of 2017. We released the concept in 2021, just last year, and this year's harvest was fairly light. This year you're going to be tasting Enigma. Enigma is a natural, extended, carbonic macerated geisha from Iris Estate. So this is the second year of production for this coffee. Placed second here in Australia in the Brewers Cup with Sash. And Iris Estate was just on Brewers Cup stage not too long ago, about a half an hour ago. So we're very proud of this farm. It's more than just geisha. We have SL28, we have 3 African heirlooms, we've got Sidra, Red Bourbon, and several other different varieties as well. So look for very exciting things coming off this farm over the next few years. This is a baby geisha. It's beginning to express itself. Give it 3 to 5 years. This is definitely world championship level coffee.
Awesome. On the mention of world championships and I guess awards over the years, have the successes changed the way you look at producing coffee and the kinds of coffees you want to produce?
Well, some of the coffees, a lot of the coffees that have been on the world stage, I've actually designed, so they're outside the scope of our typical coffees. So in a way, it has kind of bent my perspective on how to produce coffees. When it comes to the way that I produce coffees, the answer is no, because at the end of the day, it's about variety and terroir for me. If I exceed the boundaries of those parameters, then I've sort of failed as a producer. The reality is that as fun as producing coffees and bending flavors and process, whether it's with yeasts or carbonic maceration or just typical anaerobic fermentations, inevitably the world will come back to a washed expression, maybe a hybrid expression of coffee production. So, you know, as a business person, you have to recognize your audience, but at the same time keeping true to sort of the core of who you are. I'm seeing that trend, as I said before, move very quickly back towards washed expression. But I enjoy the production side on the natural as well. And I like a natural coffee from time to time too.
Awesome. So I hope everyone had a chance. So I hope everyone had a chance to taste all those coffees. If you haven't, there are still some here. And if you do want to ask Jamison any questions, please feel free.
Comment?
Enigma, yes.
And thank you, Jamison, for spending your time on our stand. But yeah, if you wish to ask a question, feel free. I don't know.